Hello everyone, my name is Shishir Tiwari and I teach law at the Department of Law, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. I am going to present a module on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights under the subject of Human Rights Law. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights (UDHR) was adopted by the UN General Assembly on 10th of December 1948. Its adoption is considered a milestone in the history of the development of international human rights law. It is also termed as Magna Carta of all mankind. The UDHR, for the first time in the human history, catalogues basic human rights and fundamental freedoms that all human beings are entitled and should enjoy, together with the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. The UDHR formed the International Bill of Human Rights. Under this module, we will try to cover four things. First of all, drafting history of the UDHR. Then we will cover the structure and the content of the UDHR. Third, we will also cover the legal effect of UDHR. Now, first of all, drafting history of UDHR. The genesis of UDHR is closely linked with the demand made after the Second World War to have an international bill of human rights. Massive abuse of human life and dignity during and immediately preceding the Second World War was main reason behind this demand. During the drafting of UN Charter at San Francisco Conference of 1945, it was suggested that the UN Charter should contain a Bill of Rights. Due to paucity of time, San Francisco Conference could not produce such a draft. San Francisco Conference, however, decided that UN, once formed, would give separate attention to the issue and develop a Bill of Rights through the work of a special commission. As mandated under Article 68 of the UN Charter, the ECOSOC established a Commission on Human Rights in nuclear form, which is also called as Nuclear Commission, on 16th of February 1946 to submit proposals, recommendations and reports for an international Bill of Human Rights. However, the Nuclear Commission felt its inability to draft a Bill of Human Rights and recommended that the full Commission should draft an international Bill of Rights. The ECOSOC considered the recommendation of the Nuclear Commission and established the full Commission consisting of one representative from each of 18 members of the UN selected by the ECOSOC. The full Commission on Human Rights (CHR) held its first session from 27th January to 10th of February 1947. The CHR considered the question of the International Bill of Human Rights and devoted a great deal of its time to a discussion of the form and content of the proposed bill. It decided that a group consisting of chairman, vice chairman and rapporteur of the CHR should undertake, with the assistance of the UN Secretariat, the task of formulating a preliminary draft of an international Bill of Human Rights to be submitted to the CHR at its second session for thorough examination. However, during the fourth session of the ECOSOC, when the CHR's report was being considered, certain members of the ECOSOC expressed a view that the drafting group should be enlarged and made more representative. In this backdrop, the chairman of the CHR, Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt, wrote a letter to the president of the ECOSOC expressing her intention to appoint a drafting committee consisting of representatives from the 8 members of the CHR. ECOSOC noted this intention of the chairman of the CHR with approval, and it also requested the UN Secretariat to prepare a document outline concerning an international bill of human rights, on the basis of which the drafting committee was to draw its preliminary draft to be submitted to the second session of CHR. Accordingly, the Division of Human Rights of the Secretariat, which was headed by Professor John P. Humphrey, prepared the Secretariat's draft outline of an international bill of human rights comprising 48 articles. Humphrey draft was both the first and the basic draft of the Universal Declaration, first in time and basic in that it became the basis for all further deletions and additions. It was the first draft of the Universal Declaration. The enlarged drafting committee held its first session from 9 to 25th of June 1947. Apart from the Secretariat's draft outline, the drafting committee also had before it a draft international bill of human rights proposed by the United Kingdom. These two documents were considered and compared by the drafting committee, together with certain US proposals for the rewording of some items appearing in the Secretariat's draft outline. Two views were expressed in the drafting committee regarding the form the preliminary draft international bill of human rights should take. Some representatives were of the view that it should take the form of a declaration or manifesto having only moral weight, but no legal obligation on members of the UN. Others thought that it should be in the form of a legally binding convention. The drafting committee, therefore, while recognizing that the decision as the form of the bill was a matter for the CHR, decided to prepare two documents, one a working paper outlining a declaration or manifesto setting forth general principles, and the second a working paper outlining a convention. A draft declaration containing a preamble and 44 suggested articles was prepared by Professor René Cassin, who was also the member of the drafting committee and representative of France. This draft declaration was based on the Secretariat's draft outline. It was considered in detail by the drafting committee and was again revised by Professor Cassin. After further examination, the drafting committee submitted it to the Commission of Human Rights as a working paper for a preliminary draft of an international manifesto or declaration on human rights. The drafting committee also submitted to the CHR, means Commission of Human Rights, the draft UK proposal with certain amendments for the development of a draft convention. The CHR considered both the document at its second session held from 2nd to 17th of December 1947. In that session, it was also decided that the three documents, to be known respectively as International Declaration on Human Rights, the International Covenant on Human Rights, and Measure for Implementation, would together form the International Bill of Human Rights. The drafting committee met for its second session from 3rd to 21st of May 1948. It considered comments on the draft International Bill of Human Rights, which had been received from a number of member governments. It redrafted the entire draft covenant, but redrafted only parts of the draft declaration due to paucity of time. However, it did not consider the question of implementation. During the third session of the CHR, which took place from 24th of May to 18th of June 1948, the individual articles of the draft declaration were examined afresh. The CHR completed the redraft of the declaration and it was adopted without opposition. The CHR did not consider the drafting committee's redraft of the covenant due to paucity of time. The CHR forwarded the text of the draft International Declaration of Human Rights comprising 28 articles to the 7th session of the Economic and Social Council. The ECOSOC transmitted this draft declaration to the United Nations General Assembly for final consideration. The United Nations General Assembly referred the draft declaration to its third committee. The third committee adopted most of the articles by unanimous vote, but with abstentions, explanations and reservations by the member states. The final draft declaration, comprising 31 articles, was submitted to the United Nations General Assembly for adoption. United Nations General Assembly adopted the proposal by the third committee with only one alteration, which put Article 3 as a second paragraph of Article 2. This changed the numbering of all following articles. The United Nations General Assembly finally adopted the UDHR on 10th of December 1948 by its resolution 217A3. The UDHR was adopted by a vote of 48 in favor and none against, with 8 abstentions. Now we will move to our second part of this module, which deals with the structure and the content of the UDHR. The UDHR consists of a preamble and 30 articles, setting forth the basic human rights and fundamental freedoms to which all men and women everywhere in the world are entitled without any discrimination. The rights specified therein encompass both civil and political rights and economic, social and cultural rights. Proclaimed by the General Assembly as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations, the UDHR is addressed to every individual and every organ of the society, that they shall strive to promote respect for and to secure the universal and effective recognition and observations of the rights and freedoms enumerated in it. Based on the content and the nature of the rights enumerated in the UDHR, the 30 articles of the UDHR can be broadly classified into 4 categories. First of all, articles general in nature. Second, articles proclaiming civil and political rights. Third, articles proclaiming economic, social and cultural rights. And the fourth, concluding articles. Articles 1 and 2 of the UDHR come under the first category, that is articles general in nature. Both the articles provide the philosophical assumptions upon which UDHR is founded. Article 1 proclaims that all human beings are born free and are equal in dignity and rights. It emphasizes that humans are endowed with reason and conscience and they should act towards each other in a spirit of brotherhood. Article 2 states that everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in the UDHR without distinction of race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth or other status. It further states that no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs. In brief, we can say that Article 2 incorporates the principle of equality and non-discrimination and states in a negative way what Article 1 states in positive terms. These two articles assure that human rights are the birthright of everyone and not privileges of a select few. All human beings are entitled to these rights not because of any state or international organization but simply because of their common birth into the human family. The second category, entitled articles proclaiming civil and political rights, comprises the largest number of articles. Article 3 to 21 of the UDHR set forth the civil and political rights to which everyone is entitled. Article 3 proclaims that everyone has the right to life, liberty and security of person, that is, right to live and to live in freedom and safety. The rights recognized in Article 3 sets the base for all following political rights and civil liberties enumerated in the UDHR. Article 4 of the UDHR provides that no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. It further prohibits all forms of slavery and slave trade. Thus, not only slavery but slavery-like practices are also prohibited by this article. Article 5 proclaims the individual's right not to be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. The right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law is guaranteed to everyone under Article 6 of the UDHR. The phrase person before the law refers to the recognition which states should accord to the right of all individuals to make, for example, agreements or contracts which courts will enforce and start proceedings before courts to ensure that their legal rights are enforced. Article 7 of the UDHR declares that every individual is equal before the law and is entitled to equal protection of the law without any discrimination. Thus, it ensures non-discrimination in the application of the law in general, that is essentially national laws. The article further states that everyone is entitled to equal protection against any discrimination in violation of the UDHR and against any incitement to such discrimination. Article 8 of the UDHR aims to create a right of recourse to a domestic tribunal or a court for a person whose constitutional or legal rights have been violated. Thus, it emphasizes on the point that no situation should ever arise where a person is without a remedy when his or her rights are violated. However, the article stresses that the person concerned should approach to the competent court only. The word competent refers to court which have been designated for a certain purposes. Thus, a person who claims that his or her intellectual property rights have been infringed should petition to a court specialized in this question and not to a court which deals, for example, environmental law. Article 9 together with Article 10 and 11 constitute fundamental legal safeguards which all legal systems should offer to individuals, namely freedom from arbitrary arrest, the right to fair and prompt trial, and the presumption of innocence. Article 9, first of all, proclaims that no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. The term arbitrary is open to two possible interpretations. Firstly, an individual may only be arrested, detained, or exiled in accordance with the legal procedures, and secondly, nobody should be subjected to arrest, detention, or exile where there is no likelihood that he or she has committed an offense. The second interpretation is the valid one, as law often allows sweeping power of arrest, and because legal procedures may often themselves be arbitrary or abused. Article 10 provides for the basic right to a fair trial in both civil and criminal matters. The article guarantees a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal to all those who appear in court. Article 11, paragraph 2 provides freedom from the application of ex post facto laws and penalties in cases related to penal offences. It means that a person shall not be punished or for those acts which were legal when they were committed, and it also means that if an act was punishable in one way when committed, a later change in the law cannot increase the punishment given. Article 12 lays down the individual's right to freedom from arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home, or correspondence, or attacks upon his honor and reputation. It further provides everyone the right to the protection of the law against such interference or attacks. The right to freedom of movement and residence within the border of each state is recognized in Article 13 of the UDHR. It also proclaims the individual's right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. Article 14 of the UDHR guarantees the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. However, it further clarifies that this right cannot be invoked in the case of prosecutions genuinely arising from non-political crimes or from acts contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. Article 15 provides that everyone has the right to a nationality, and one shall not be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality nor denied the right to change his nationality. Article 16, paragraph 1 proclaims that men and women of full age have the right to marry and to found a family. Further, they are entitled to equal rights as to marriage, during marriage, and its dissolution. Paragraph 2 further emphasizes that marriage shall be entered into only with the free and full consent of the intending spouses. The use of the word free is intended to eliminate any compulsion by parents, by other spouses, by the authorities, or anyone else. Paragraph 3 recognizes that the family, whatever its nature, for example, nuclear, single parent or extended, is the natural and fundamental group unit of society as entitled to protection by society and the state. The right to own property alone as well as in association with others is recognized in Article 17 of the UDHR. It also states that one shall not be deprived of his or her property arbitrarily. Article 18 proclaims the individual's right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief and freedom to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance either alone or in community with others and in public or private. Article 19 of the UDHR recognizes the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. The right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association is recognized in Article 20 of the UDHR. It further states that one cannot be compelled to belong to an association. Article 21 of the UDHR proclaims important political rights. Paragraph 3 of the UDHR declares that the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government and requires periodic and genuine elections by universal and equal suffrage and to be held by secret vote for the expression of such will. Now come to the third category, which is entitled Articles proclaiming economic, social and cultural rights. Articles 22 to 27 of the UDHR form part of this category. Article 22 is the cornerstone of the economic, social, cultural rights enumerated in the UDHR. It starts with the proposition that everyone as a member of society is entitled to realization of the economic, social and cultural rights indispensable for his dignity and the free development of his personality. In order to achieve these aspired rights, the article emphasizes that national efforts and the international cooperation should be taken and each country must take into account its own resources and priorities. Article 23 set forth a series of rights. For example, the individual's right to work, to just and favorable conditions of work, to free choice of employment, and to protection against employment. It further states that everyone has the right to equal pay for equal work without any discrimination and to just and favorable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family an existence worthy of human dignity and supplemented if necessary by other means of social protection. Paragraph 4 of Article 23 also recognizes the individual's right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of his interest. Article 24 provides the right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. Article 25 paragraph 1 of the UDHR provides that everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family. This includes food, clothing, housing and medical care and necessary social services. Paragraph 2 of the Article 25 acknowledges that motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. It also states that all children shall enjoy the same social protection whether born in or out of wedlock. Article 26, paragraph 1 deals with the right to education. It states that the education shall be free in the elementary and fundamental stages and that elementary education shall be compulsory. Paragraph 2 of the Articles 26 declares that the aim of education shall be the full development of human personality, the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, and the promotion of understanding, tolerance, and friendship among all nations, racial or religious groups. Paragraph 3 of Article 26 recognizes parents' prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. Come to Article 27 of the UDHR. It prescribes the enjoyment of cultural rights. It insists that everyone has the right freely to participate in all forms of cultural life of the community. They have also the right to be benefited from scientific and technological progress. Now we will discuss the last three articles of the UDHR, namely Article 28 to Article 30. These three articles constitute the fourth and last category, and these three articles provide a larger framework in which all human rights are to be universally enjoyed. Article 28, first of all, declares that everyone is entitled to a social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in the UDHR can be fully realized. Article 29 is the only provision in the whole UDHR which speaks of duties. Paragraph 2 of the Article 29 recognizes that the rights proclaimed by the UDHR are not absolute but subject to limitations. It permits a state to enact laws limiting the exercise of these rights, provided their sole purpose is to secure due recognition and respect for the rights and freedoms of others and of meeting the just requirement of morality, public order, and the general welfare in democratic society. Paragraph 3 of Article 29 further states that the rights enumerated under the UDHR cannot be exercised contrary to the purposes and the principles of the United Nations. The last article of the UDHR, namely Article 30, spells out a rule of interpretation. It states that the UDHR should not be used as a pretext for violating rights in any circumstances. This rule applies not only to states but also to groups and individuals. Thus, no one may take an article of the UDHR out of context and apply it in such a way that other articles would be violated. Now, after covering the second portion of our module, we will try to cover the third segment of our module, that is legal effect or significance of the UDHR. There are two conflicting views regarding the legal effect of UDHR. As per one view, the UDHR is not a legally binding instrument as it is merely a United Nations General Assembly resolution. Even most of the countries at the time of discussion on the UDHR in the United Nations General Assembly were agreed on the point that the UDHR was not legally binding upon them. According to Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt, who was the chairman of the drafting committee. The UDHR is not and does not purport to be a statement of law or of legal obligation. It is instead, she continued, a common standard of achievement for all peoples of all nations. According to the second view, that although the UDHR might not have been binding when it was adopted in 1948, but it has now become binding or assumed legal implications. Scholars who support this view argue that the UDHR derives obligatory character either from its status as an authoritative interpretation of the human rights obligations contained in the UN Charter, or its status as customary international law, or its status as containing general principles of law. Now we will cover the last segment of our module, that is influence of the UDHR. The UDHR has exercised a profound influence both internationally and nationally since its adoption. The provisions of the UDHR were transformed into international conventional law in the International Covenants on Human Rights. On the basis of principles contained in the UDHR, the United Nations has adopted various legal instruments on human rights. For example, Convention on Genocide, Slavery, Torture, Racial Discrimination, Protection of Refugees, Children, Discrimination against Women, etc. The ICJ, means International Court of Justice, has cited to as well as invoked the provisions of the UDHR in number of cases. For example, asylum case. Second example is the case concerning United States diplomatic and consular staff in Tehran. Similarly, the regional courts and domestic court have also invoked the UDHR. For example, the European Court of Human Rights in Golder case has invoked the UDHR. Apart from these influences, the UDHR has also inspired or served as a model for the rights provisions of some 90 constitutions all over the world. Now, we are moving towards conclusion. In the end, we can say that the adoption of the UDHR was a landmark event. The content of the term human rights was explained for the first time by the UDHR. Irrespective of the doubt regarding its legal effect, the UDHR practical importance has been demonstrated through its invocation by the ICJ, regional and domestic courts as an aid to interpretation of relevant human rights treaties. The UDHR has set a standard by which national behavior can be measured. An importance of UDHR can be well understood by the affirmation in the following words by 171 countries at the 1993 Vienna Conference on Human Rights. They affirmed by consensus their commitment to the purposes and principles contained in the Charter of their nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And this shows the importance, influence, the validity of the UDHR. Thank you very much and goodbye to all of you.